Welcome to the Beau Show. We've all loved Arnold Schwarzenegger for his iconic roles in Conan the Barbarian, the Terminator, Predator, and Last Action Hero, just to name a few. As an actor, he has been a juggernaut. He was also an Austrian immigrant who became a bodybuilder. He immigrated to the United States in 1968 at the age of 21. Arnold had taken a great interest in the new sport of bodybuilding, so beginning in 1970, he began to dominate competitive bodybuilding over that decade and became the poster boy for this newfound sport. And gym memberships began to skyrocket. Arnold made his big screen debut as Arnold Strong in the low-budget feature Hercules in New York. But then he landed a Golden Globe Award for Best Acting Debut in a Motion Picture for Stay Hungry, alongside Jeff Bridges and Sally Field. The 1975 Mr. Olympia contest went on to become a classic sports documentary. Director John Milius's Conan the Barbarian became a smash hit and just increased Arnold's fame and notoriety. He continued his big screen repertoire with movies such as The Terminator, Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, Twins, and True Lies. He also married TV journalist Maria Shriver in 1986. In October of 2003, Arnold was elected governor in a special recall election of Gray Davis in California. He held that office until 2013 and got a divorce from Shriver when it was learned that Arnold had an affair and a child with their live-in family maid. So no one can say that Arnold's professional career is a bad one. He went from an unknown Austrian immigrant to a bodybuilder to movie star to the Governator. But recently Arnold's tone has changed a bit. He doesn't sound like the freedom-loving, limited government guy he used to be, especially with his incendiary video rebuking Donald Trump in 2020. Have a look.
President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever. The good thing is that he soon will be as irrelevant as an old tweet.
So he thinks Trump will go down as the worst president ever. Even JFK director Oliver Stone totally disagrees with Arnold on this. He thinks George W. Bush was far worse, if nothing else, due to the Iraq situation and debt inflation. Then Arnold later in that video says this.
I grew up Catholic. I went to church, to Catholic school. I learned the Bible and my catechism and all this. And from those days I remember a phrase that is relevant today. A servant's heart. It means serving something larger than yourself. See, what we need right now from our elected representatives is a public servant's heart. We need public servants that serve something larger than their own power or their own party. We need public servants who will serve higher ideals, the ideals in which this country was founded, the ideals that other countries look up to.
So what ideals is Joe Biden serving? Or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer? Could it be China? The notion that Arnold thinks that we actually have public servants is a fool's errand. Name one politician that is not serving himself or herself. And then Arnold signs off this way.
President-elect Biden, we wish you great success as our president. If you succeed, our nation succeeds. We support you with all our hearts as you seek to bring us together.
I have to presume Arnold thinks that President Biden is bringing us together. But do you think that? Do you think if a president is mentally compromised or even compromised by business dealings in China, that such a thing is a success for our nation? Is withdrawing troops from Afghanistan so quickly that the Taliban is totally taking over again a national success, Arnold?
President-elect Biden, we stand with you today, tomorrow, and forever in defense of our democracy from those who would threaten it.
Arnold stands forever with Joe Biden to protect democracy. But wait, wouldn't asking his Department of Justice how to increase federal power to restrict freedom be threatening democracy? I don't care how many lush orchestral strings and dramatic music you put in the underscore, it doesn't wash. I'll prove it. Watch. You should absolutely trust Joe Biden and Anthony Fauci and Kamala Harris. They terminated the election. Joe Biden said, I'll be back. And he was right. He stayed over 40 years. We've got to come together. Just like Joe Biden and his Ray-Ban aviators come together. Just like Hunter Biden comes together with hookers and crack. Just like I came together with my maid. That's how we come together as Americans. I wonder what Arnold thinks when he sees Senator Rand Paul refer Tony Fauci for criminal proceedings in lying about the funding and origin of the virus. Wouldn't that be advancing the cause of freedom? To learn where and how and why this virus was proliferated? Or are we supposed to just stand in allegiance to Joe Biden forever? Should we be bound to loyalty, forged in fire like Conan the Barbarian's sword of steel? Well, I can answer this question because Arnold was just on TV saying the following.
There is a virus here. It kills people. And the only way we prevent it is to get vaccinated, to wear masks, to do social distancing, washing your hands all the time, and not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom. Because with freedom comes obligations and responsibilities. It's like no different than a traffic light. We put a traffic light at an intersection so someone doesn't kill someone else by accident. So this is why we have a traffic light. You cannot say, no one is going to tell me that I'm going to stop here, that I have to stop at this traffic light here. I'm going to go right through it. Yeah, then you kill someone else, and then it is your doing. We have to come together rather than fighting and always just saying, this, according to my principles, this is a free country, and I'm going to have the freedom to wear no mask. Yeah, you have the freedom to wear no mask, but you know something? You're a schmuck for not wearing a mask.
This is pretty incendiary. Screw your freedom? Wow, Arnold, I didn't realize you were the Terminator of freedom too. And his pushing of masks is also funny because we have seen in the wide open now how the CDC has revised its mask stance, especially the basic cloth kind, time and time again. And even Fauci's emails on this. Then he uses the analogy of a traffic light. No one looks at a traffic light as a restriction of freedom. We see it as a common sense civil engineering feat. You create a stop signal so that we have an efficient and safe flow of traffic. There are some who look at traffic lights like they don't exist. That is true. But they don't see it as a restriction of freedom, but rather as though they are above the law and above science and they're selfish. It's about what they can get away with. Laws of physics say that if someone goes through a red light with oncoming traffic, chances are they will crash into another car, causing injury or death. Wearing a mask is not the same thing. There needs to be concrete science behind it, and there isn't. That doesn't mean that we should defy logic or defy laws of science. It just means there needs to be legitimate proof. Nothing has stopped this virus. Not masks, not lockdowns, not shutting down your local restaurant, not plexiglass dividers, and not even social distancing. We should always proceed with caution, since we don't know enough. We practice common sense. But if leaders say, you need to stay in your house for the next 6 months and wear your mask inside at all times, and to hell with your business, is that really common sense? You don't have to be an anti-vaxxer to heed common sense or to not heed common sense. This shouldn't even be political. I think we all sacrificed a lot just to get this thing slowed down, even if the so-called wisdom and guidance was flawed. We gave it a shot, and then here comes a new variant. Will this go on forever? And it wouldn't be so politicized if we didn't see the theatrics and the hypocrisy. Newsom at the French Laundry, Pelosi getting her hair fixed, Obama's 60th birthday bash, Biden with an unmasked Tom Brady. Why do they ask us to do what they are unwilling to do? That's why it becomes political, not because of so-called science that they talk about as an absolute, but because they don't practice what they preach. And even if every person got the vaccine, you would still see infection. Arnold acts like the unvaccinated want to run out and sneeze on everyone. That's just not true. How can a maskless person be a schmuck if the CDC just told us back in May that the vaccinated didn't need to mask up anymore, huh? And Fauci thinks that such a person would be infringing on another person's individual rights if they don't wear a mask. How has this notion of freedom and rights become so perverted? Who do I sue next time I get a cold or the flu? Who am I supposed to sue when a person without a driver's license or car insurance kills a family member in an auto accident? You can incentivize good behavior and you can penalize criminal behavior, but you can't legislate morality and restrict freedom under the guise of virtue. Arnold and others must be looking at personal choice as an abuse of freedom. And then the shame game happens and the piling on, from Mika Brzezinski to Sarah Haynes and all the lefty loons at The View. They're telling you how to live your lives. Look at what we have seen with social media and the censorship and the restrictions. That has been a major reduction in abuse of freedom, but we have sat back and just let it happen. Going out and placing dirty hypodermic needles in public places is criminal and it's abusive. But just walking around town and making a living, is that a criminal thing? This is the modern version of the Scarlet Letter. To think that Arnold governed California and had this mentality is frightening. And then to have that torch passed to Gavin Newsom is just nutty. And I look at other leaders. I guess Andrew Cuomo wasn't exactly social distancing from his female staffers, was he? For a guy who is so worried about the virus and limiting your movement, he sure kisses a lot of cheeks. The one thing Arnold says that is correct is that with freedom comes responsibility. That is true. We should all exercise common sense when it comes to our freedom. But here's a corollary to that. Having freedom also means being vigilant to protect it. That's a responsibility too. When your kid is sick and you don't want him or her going to school to infect other kids, or simply because he or she feels bad, you're practicing common sense and restraint. But being told you're a schmuck and to stay inside forever because you have listened to the CDC and every expert lied to you about where, when, how, and why this virus got here and how to mitigate it, well, that's just silly. Dan Crenshaw, congressman from Texas, always seems to bring a dose of common sense to issues. And here's what he tweeted regarding children, this whole issue with children and schools right now. Here's what he said. You actually do have a choice, and that's letting parents decide what is best for their children. These arbitrary and inflexible mandates move the authority on a child's health from the parent to the government. Children need germs. They cannot permanently wear masks. The longer we keep them in masks, the more we delay a cold and flu season that will just get more dangerous with time. Not only are you taking away agency from parents and eroding public trust, but you're also now reducing the immunity of toddlers and other children to diseases like RSV, cold, and flu. Where is this dose of common sense when it comes to the Terminator? Or does he just want to terminate freedom? He certainly said screw it. He claims he knows more about the bicep muscle than anyone because he trained for decades. That's probably true. But to act like he's an expert on a virus whose origin is not totally known, whose strains get more infectious rather than weaker, that's asinine. Let's remind ourselves that in spite of Arnold's success professionally, he did knock up the family maid while he was married to Maria Shriver. Do we trust medical advice from him? And because he's in California, maybe he has become accustomed to losing freedom, since that state has been at a rapid pace off the Big Sur cliffs. And Arnold is just one of many celebrities doing some good old-fashioned virtue signaling. We've been seeing this now for over a year. I think where Arnold gets it wrong is where he makes the assumption that freedom and recklessness are the same thing. They're not mutually inclusive. Yes, freedom awards you choices and consequences, but it's also interesting to me that Arnold looks at anyone who's unvaccinated or maskless as a killer. But yet, how much has he said about the Wuhan lab, Anthony Fauci, or the Chinese Communist Party, or the Taliban? If we are really going to talk about screwing your freedom, where is Arnold on this? Was freedom the cause of gain-of-function research? Was freedom the cause of Chairman Mao's rise to power? Let's even take cigarettes or alcohol as an example just for a moment. People have the freedom to drink alcohol and to smoke cigarettes. That's a personal choice, and one that affects their health. If you drink and drive, you certainly could injure or kill someone else. You could also put someone at risk of cancer from secondhand smoke. Is Arnold saying to everyone who wishes to partake in these vices, so to speak, to screw their freedom? I don't think so. But that's not really a great example, because alcohol and smoking can be considered deliberate known health risks. Breathing air and going about your daily business is not a health risk per se. So to tell someone to screw their sense of freedom for merely existing is an illogical thing to do, when it is pretty much known that any mask other than an N95 is essentially ineffective. Why would you advocate for that? Especially after the CDC said that the vaccinated no longer needed to wear masks, but now has changed course yet again. Plus, we know it's not 100% effective either. I also find it interesting that Arnold, who gushes over Biden, has nothing to say about the southern border, where new infections of all kinds come into our country every single day. Who's the schmuck now? With freedom comes responsibility. Yes, absolutely. The freedom to choose wisely, to make sensible immigration policy. Remember when Trump cut off air travel from China and people called him a xenophobe? Well, that cut off the source. People have been flying here all the time, and the southern border, of course, is still just a mess. So I find it interesting that Arnold wants to demonize anyone not wearing a mask, even vaccinated ones, but is silent on far more obvious threats to freedom and health. Nobody out there is trying to infect someone else. But when you tell people how to live, how to breathe, how to protect themselves, and you mandate it, and you say, screw your freedom, you're talking about something kind of dangerous. Because what we allow now will dictate what we allow in the future. How many business owners do you think are excited about a lockdown and closures? Many of them can't even get enough staff to work. Huge staffing and supply chain issues. What I think celebrities need to be saying is the following. If you feel it is right for you and your family to get vaccinated, by all means do so, since we are seeing some good results. But if you have a pre-existing autoimmune disorder, or you have fertility concerns, or whatever your medical reasons may be, consult with your trusted physician about it and be as safe as possible. Take care of yourselves and take care of your fellow Americans. We are in this together. Now, see how that sounds? It's encouraging, but it's also not damning or shaming. Calling someone a schmuck or a moron like Arnold did, or saying screw your freedom, is to politicize and polarize the issue when we have clearly been given faulty guidance every step of the way. I'm not saying it's not deadly. We know that much. I'm not saying it's not contagious. We know that much as well. There's always room for balance and reason. Freedom is a wide open horizon, but there are limitations based upon basic precepts that we can all largely agree upon. But the demonization of people who make certain medical choices is not the way to go. And I doubt it will persuade someone to your way of thinking. I'm not demonizing those who got the vaccine or those who did not. They make that choice. And I make the choice whether I want to be around those people. I make it every day. I cannot live life in a bubble. And I'm also not going to follow the advice or the damnation of Arnold Schwarzenegger. You hate to hear any American, especially an immigrant, who's now a citizen, say, screw your freedom. If he can say that with a straight face to the people in Chicago who shoot and kill people on a daily basis, let him try. If he wants to say, screw your freedom, to Antifa, who abuses freedom of assembly to burn buildings, let's see if he does. But no, he's chosen to say, screw your freedom, to anyone who wants to exercise medical freedom and personal health decisions. You take a risk if you get the vaccine, and you take a risk if you don't. It's your call. No one should hold you to gunpoint to make that decision. You make a decision to wear a seatbelt, or you can make a decision to not wear one. The consequences could be stiff, yeah. Freedom is not free from consequence. But it also has to be a self-regulating quality wherein we maintain freedom and evaluate the pros and the cons of any restriction thereof. There can be an honest, open debate about this and how we move forward. This latest from Arnold is puzzling, but it's also disappointing. He used to motivate people to get in shape. Don't know what happened to that. So now he's just demonizing people with whom he disagrees. Let's let our eyes, our ears, our lips, and our brains follow logic and careful reason. No hype one way or the other. And perhaps just as critically, use our freedom of thought to discover where this came from, how to beat it, and how to prevent or at least mitigate it. So do you think Arnold went too far in this rant? Or was he being sensible? Let me know what you think. Love to hear your comments. I'm Beau, and that's the show.